Do you think creators should niche down?
It depends.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say it would depend on the type of person that they are. If they are someone who is fascinated by a very narrow domain, such as copywriting, fitness, and weight loss, I would say yes, because they will naturally develop such deep expertise in that area. And I think they should niche down and just talk to those specific people. Where the niching down advice is harmful is when you have someone who's more multi passionate and they really struggle to be creatively fulfilled and just write about one topic. And I don't mean people who are distracted, because I think those two get conflated. I mean, genuinely, people who, for whatever reason, are into psychology, philosophy, sales, marketing, maybe reading manga like I am and anime, and they like, I just want to explore all of this. And for those people, I recommend they find what's called an intersection point, which is all of these interests. What is the one unifying goal or unifying problem that all of these move towards? And that is what your niche is. And it tends to be a more complex problem, actually. So this would be someone who says, okay, I really want to help people with weight loss, but I'm also obsessed with emotional regulation and just processing emotions. Those two things might seem really separate until you realize that your clients know how to lose weight, but it's that they're not doing it because when they get stressed, they stop working out and then you can't get them to actually do the exercises. So then you actually teach them breathwork exercises and emotional regulation techniques. So when they're stressed, they're able to actually start working out again. And then that can be a core part of your content. So to me, it depends. That's why I say if you're a specialist, pick that one narrow thing and niche down. And that tends to be like a very narrow, deep problem that you can solve. If you're more polymathic, multi passionate, have multiple interests, it's about exploring until you find that one goal, problem, or obstacle or thing that unifies everything together. And then that's the niche.
That's a pretty cool answer. I never heard it before, but I guess you're more of the polymathic kind of guy. And I'm wondering what's your, big goal and like problem you want to solve, complex problem.
Yes, I consider myself to be an aspiring polymath because I define being a polymath as being multi specialist, not necessarily a generalist. People with multiple interests, I would say, are generalists. They know a little about a lot, but they can't go extremely deep and they can't solve deep problems in those domains. I believe that someone becomes a polymath when they become an absolute specialist at fitness, at, psychology, mental health, writing, and all of these things have such deep expertise that you can solve quite complex problems. And for me, the unifying thing, which there's two, the first one is a way of life. You can almost think of it as, okay, I really want to have enough money to be self-sufficient and provide for a family, but I also want to be creatively fulfilled in the way that I make it. I want to feel healthy and happy every day. So I need to know how to process my emotions and have my health in check, even though I'm busy with my business. Because I need to make the money, I need to know sales and marketing to at least a decent enough degree that they don't become bottlenecks. I need to know writing at a more specialist degree because the other thing that I really want to do is publish books and become an author. And that requires such deep expertise for the way that I want to do it. So when I started thinking of my niche and my big goal as a way of life, I was like, now everything connects. I need to know like emotional regulation. I need to know to write. And then with philosophy, well, why do I want to do this? Why would I do anything? Well, that reason, like exploring philosophy became very practical and that became a part of my brand. And that's what I hope to do with my brand, although I don't always execute it correctly, is I would love for people to look at my brand and be like, ah, I love the way that guy lives and the way that he thinks and what he's able to accomplish. And like, that's what I want as well. So the way of life for me is probably the ultimate unifier of everything.
That's pretty cool, to be honest. And one of the questions I had, how did you get to this? I know you have had a pretty rough journey, and I wanted to know how did you get to, your business doing well, you're trying to life maxing, we can say, or just any of that.
Yeah, it has been very challenging. Earlier, when you asked about the niche, should people niche down? That was one of the biggest obstacles for me in my career in general. I always wanted to be more of an artist and a creative person, but I became a musician in my early 20s and I was very broke. And I realized that creating art and producing things without having enough money to be self sufficient was not a trade off I wanted to make. So I became a teacher so that I could become more self sufficient, but I still didn't make great money, but I was self sufficient enough that I was quite happy. But I was creatively unfulfilled when I was a teacher. So I've always had a trade off somewhere that I didn't want to make. So I got into business to be able to become more self sufficient and then became a creator for the more creative side of things to be able to create content and think things through and feel fulfilled. But that had a lot of challenges because I niched into ghostwriting and it was great. I made great money, but then I felt creatively unfulfilled again. And I felt capped and like I couldn't talk about the things I wanted to talk about. So that was challenging. But then I tried to be like less constrained to just ghostwriting, but then I was struggling to make money because I was talking about all these different things like self improvement, psychology, philosophy, and I wasn't necessarily grounding it in something practical and having a clear value proposition for the people who followed me. And it took me a lot of experimenting, a lot of failed offers and launches, and a lot of messing around to figure out how to be someone with multiple interests and unify all of these things without having too big of trade-offs in either category. That took like 3 to 4 years of really painful exploration where your peers are telling you, hey, just stop being an idiot and just niche down. Hey, you're like you're just doing it the wrong way. And something in my gut said that I was, but I wasn't. Yes, I'm doing this in the wrong way and it's not working, but I also just can't do it the way that you want me to. And just niche down and be happy with that. That just is not me. But I couldn't find someone who could show me the other way to do it, where you can be multi-passionate and talk about multiple things and still make money and achieve those goals. And that is something I felt I slowly had to figure out on my own. But I'm grateful for it in hindsight because it gave me a very large amount of clarity on how to do it. And now I'm able to teach it. And it's really cool to be able to be that person that I wish I had over the past 4 years while I was experimenting.
Pretty cool. And to get back to our beginnings, and you started at X and, this writing and business. How did you get into that?
A friend of mine said I had to meet this guy at a coffee shop who was teaching people to start cleaning businesses. And this guy was doing like 30, 40K a month with just Twitter, like doing boring business coaching. And I was like, what the hell? And the guy's like, yeah, man, like you're a college teacher. You've read a lot of books. You should be on Twitter doing this kind of stuff. You would crush. I'm like, what? How do you even make money on Twitter? That's insane. Isn't it about politics and all this crap? And he's like, oh, no, man, you'd make so much money. I'm like, I don't even know how I'd make money. But I'm not going to teach people to run cleaning businesses. I'm not Mr. Clean. Like, what the hell? I have too much hair for that. He just goes, well, you'll figure it out. Promise me that you'll write on Twitter every day for a year, because I promise you that if you do, it'll change your life. I was like, I guess so. And that was how I started writing on Twitter.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then as I was, researching for this podcast, I heard that you meet a lot of cool creators, like I think Dakota Robertson and a lot of those other people that helped you in your journey. How can other people network and even on Substack, on X, everywhere that they can find friends and people that can help them and they can help them.
Yeah, there's like an upward spiral effect with networking. In the beginning, when you're a smaller account and you don't have as much skills or expertise like I did, like I just didn't know how the online game worked, it's better to just network with people around your size and talk with them and grow together. So, hey, like you're in a similar niche. I'm in here as well. I'm just learning the game. You're learning the game. Why don't we create like a mini mastermind and let's meet every Friday and just look at what's working and break down each other's content and help each other grow faster and get better at content together. That's what I would recommend to people who are starting out, and it'll be more fun. You'll have a tighter feedback loop and you'll learn a lot faster. And then you'll start growing a lot faster too, especially if you do like restack trades with each other and things like that. Even if it's like smaller growth, it'll still be faster than if you weren't doing it. That will allow you to go to like the next level where you'll be big enough that you can then network with a little bit of bigger people and bigger people and bigger people. And it creates this upward spiral effect. Because once you get to a decent amount of subs and followers, regardless of what platform you're on, the networking becomes really easy because you can reach out to people and they just will most likely respond. Be like, oh, hey, I love your stuff. It's almost like you've proven that you've passed the hard part, right? It's like, okay, this guy got past like 20,000 followers or 50,000 followers, especially is where you've really cracked it. Past 100, you can pretty much reach out to anyone. On Substack, I would say 1,000 subscribers is like, damn, this person's doing pretty good. 1,000, you're like, okay, yeah, they're in the game, like they're serious. 5,000, I usually look at them and think, yeah, that's a pretty decent sized creator. If you're past 10,000 or around 10,000 subs, I'm like, yeah, you're pretty much like good. That's like 100,000 followers, in my opinion, is 10,000 subs. So it just gets easier as you go up to network. And I experienced this with Substack where now I can basically reach out to people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm down to do like a podcast or a live or chat. But in the beginning, if you want to accelerate it and you have a little bit of money, I would just pay people for consulting calls. Most of them only do them for like 50 to $100. So if you have a little bit of money, don't go to Starbucks this month. Just go and pay like someone for a coaching call. And that's all it takes to really start getting into the network. Like most of the people that I ended up meeting were because I did that. Like that's how I met Kieran Drew, Alex Mathers, Charles Miller. I think Lara Acosta came from a different way of networking. Dan Coe, that's how I met Dan, I paid him for a consulting call. Dakota, I paid for his coaching. So I did the free networking first and just like grew in these like kind of mini mastermind things to start to get decent traction. And then I was using all my extra money to basically buy my way to meeting people and chatting with them. And those are like the two shortcuts that I know.
Yeah, I think that's that's better than most of the advice on basically everywhere where they are telling you to just spam people, follow for follow, and other things like that that we know it will not work.
Yeah, no.
And we're in the platforms like X and Substack. What do you think it's a better platform for now, or why did you get in more into the Substack?
My short answer is I think Substack is the best platform right now, but it really depends on what you write about, where your people are, and what culture you like the most. X to me has a special place in my heart because it's where I started. Remembering early Twitter and like writing the threads and going viral and meeting people, the energy was great. I met some of my best friends that like lifelong friends I met in the early Twitter days. And it's fantastic, but I find Twitter prefers quite polarizing content, and I'm not someone who really likes to write edgier, polarizing content. And the culture to me is quite political, so I always felt like there was a little bit of a mismatch, but I was able to find my own tribe there. I wrote on LinkedIn, that just made me creatively completely unfulfilled. I made a lot of money, which was great, but as more of an artistic creative type, like LinkedIn, I'm like so anti LinkedIn culture. Like I just cannot stand it. So for me, I wrote on there for like a couple years and I was like, X is really polarizing, LinkedIn is really corporate. And I just felt like there wasn't like a place for me on the internet. And this, believe it or not, is, I don't even know if everyone will believe me. This is before Substack got like huge. I was like, I'm just going to test Substack. I just have this like gut feeling that maybe it's cool, but it might be a waste of my time. So this is even before Dan Coe like moved to Substack. It's quite a few months before that. I was like, I'm just going to start posting there quietly. I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm just going to see how it goes. And the first couple months, I didn't really get much traction. Kind of felt like it was a waste of time. But then I got like a couple notes that did well. Some of my newsletters started doing better. I found some other people like Joel Yulee and Philip, I think his name's Sarapex, that I loved their content. Like I'm like, this is so freaking good. Like it's got this spirituality component. It's got this deep personal philosophy to it. It's artistic and it's just different. And I can't find this anywhere else on the internet. And that is when I was like, I got to go all in on Substack. Mainly because I just loved the culture fit. And I finally felt like I could write about the things I wanted to write about and that people would like it. And the funny thing was when I started then writing about Substack about the stuff that I actually wanted to write about, I started making it the core platform and repurposing it to other platforms. And then some of it actually started doing well on LinkedIn and on Twitter too. So I was like, oh, shit, wow, I needed that kind of home base with people who were like-minded and like a like-minded tribe to test the content and find my people. And that's why I love Substack more than the other platforms. But I think the meta lesson in there is which one has your people. For some people, like they love LinkedIn. They're like, I'm a business corporate guy who just loves to not share everything about my life, just talk about work and play by like political pandering. And they love it.
Yeah.
Good for you. Go to LinkedIn. I'm not here to like say don't do that. It just depends on where you fit.
And do you think Substack blow up so much because there is this more like artistic niched people where there can be authentic, they can post things for their books and other stuff. It's more other people say about Substack that it's more authentic, they can be themselves, it's more honest. It's kind of the less, it's not like the other platforms, they say. What do you think about that?
I think there's two reasons that Substack is really good and is blowing up. One is the culture, and that X feels very polarized. LinkedIn feels very, inauthentic. Curated maybe is the right word. It's not, like LinkedIn's not polarized, but it's very, like watch what you say. Because your bosses are on this platform, you could get fired. And that's just by design. So there's cultural incentives to those platforms where Substack feels a bit more come as you are. Like your tribe is here. You can write how you want to write. You can talk about what you want to talk about within reason. And I feel like it has a very healthy culture in that way. So yes, I think it filled a cultural need that people felt. But two, I think it has a better incentive structure right now for creators than the other platforms do. Like again, on X, you're incentivized to write really polarizing content and you have to sell products, like try to get people off platform and get them to write, like check out your newsletters and stuff. On LinkedIn, you have to do something similar, but you have to play the game differently. On Substack, it's, hey, you can launch a paid newsletter. You can put a button in your post that says DM me if you want people to buy products. You can have your podcast here as well, so you can nurture your audience while you're also like creating your content. You don't have to do that off platform. We're not going to punish you for doing all of this. And if you want to make money, you can just launch a paid Substack and you can actually like earn directly from your subscribers and people can support you. I think that incentive is fantastic. And I get the feeling X tried to do it by paying people for impressions, but I don't think they did it as well as Substack did. And because Substack makes its money from creators and it wants creators to win and make money, it just feels like you can win there. I have a theory that they're going to add a feature this year or maybe next year at the latest where you can sell products on Substack as well and Substack takes a cut. And I think that's the right move, is just let creators fully monetize. If you have a course, if you have coaching, consulting, why not just be able to sell it directly like on Substack and Substack takes a cut? And I would love if they made that move. And I think that it'll be an interesting experiment to see how much creators love that and if other social media platforms actually follow suit in their own way and incentivize creators to actually sell things through the platform.
That's that's pretty good marketing. If somebody from Substack sees this, then they should try this for sure. And other thing is, you talk a lot about kind of balancing the business side, the skill like marketing and sales, and the artistic side. And I wonder, how do you balance it now? Are you fulfilled with your art and how you express yourself, and how do you match it with the business and the business side?
The tension is real. It's not an easy thing to balance. And I would say that this is not one of those problems to be solved as much it is something to be managed. Because sometimes I do have to put my business toque on, I guess, and just write sales emails and say, okay, I need to do a launch. I'm going to create an offer. I need to do an attraction offer with the upsells. How's it all going to connect? I need to write sales emails, but I want them to feel authentic to me. But I can't be too artsy and creative because they do have to convert. We can't reinvent the wheel here. We have to stick to what's working. And there's a time to do that. But if you're only doing that, it feels really unfulfilling. Then there's a time where it's, hey, there's this really cool thing I want to write about. I just feel like people need to know about it. Like for me, I've been thinking about how one of the most important things that a creator, or what is a creator's role in culture nowadays. And I actually think it's not to give people tips and actionable advice primarily. It's actually to give people a reason to finally take action to change their life. It's to solve the meaning crisis. Right now, like in culture, people think I don't really have a reason to do anything. Like, why do anything at all? Why would I build a business? Why would I get in shape? I can just retreat into simulation, into video games. People are like, oh, the world is so crazy and it's so messed up. And logically, people know what to do. They know how, like, okay, how to get to shape? I just go to the gym. I want to make money. I need to like start working on marketing stuff. I need to learn sales, but people just don't do the thing. But creators have the opportunity to say, I have a personal philosophy on what is important, why we should prioritize it, and why I think you should also do this too. And that to me is like my current artistic pursuit. Like I'm just thinking that through. I think it's a really interesting problem in the culture that creators are uniquely positioned to solve. Can I not be the person who says, here is how to write a piece of content online, because everyone has done that? Can I be the person that says, I'm going to finally give you the reason to actually do it and not quit? That is a fun challenge to try to solve in the content and the marketing. That's more of like an artistic thing for me because it's self-expression. It's something I'm truly passionate about. So I think I love writing about that stuff, but then there's also the economics of it. And these two things, again, like it's not this or this, it's their attention, and sometimes I can marry them. Like, okay, I'm going to give you a reason to start writing online, and I'm going to give you the operational side, and you do have to like pay me for it because it took a lot of work and I need to be able to be supported so I can continue to make this content. Other times the art is a little harder to bridge. It's an idea I'm thinking about that I'm like, I don't know how to monetize that, but I really need to talk about it. But that's okay. That's just self-expression. That's me. That's the art. So there's a tension between it. They're not always easy. It's not always easy to monetize on the artistic creative side. And it's not always easy to do the business side without killing your soul. But you can kind of like manage it with a bit of a ebb and flow. And it is possible.
Yeah, I do agree. And I want to get even deeper on that point. You said most people, we have a lot of information and a lot of, this practical value of, how to get this and that. And other things which most people know, but, the real reason is that nobody, not the reason, but the real thing is nobody is giving people a reason to do it and to get into it. Do you think there's this? My question was, how do you give creators the reason to give people reason to start doing something, because there's this, of course, AI age and all of that stuff. Do you think, what's your topic for it? Like your take on AI and doing this creator thing?
Yes. I think people will, even if you gave them the practical way to do something, they're not going to do it without a strong personal reason to act. And I've tested this with my content. If I just give everyone the playbook and the tips, here's exactly what to do, people kind of read it and they don't really value it. Like, oh yeah, it's cool. I don't really feel anything. Okay, cool. Yeah, on to the next thing. But our job as creators is to talk about why someone should do something and to get them emotionally invested. And this is where it comes down to learning persuasion. And at the ultimate deepest level, it's actually about identity transformation. So if I was to make it really practical, someone is not going to act until they feel like that action is incongruent with who they are or who they want to be. And identity is largely determined by our self-story, which is what I call a paradigm. Is what are all of the beliefs you have about yourself and the world and what you should do? And a lot of content talks about belief shifting. It's like, oh, you just need to shift people's beliefs. Like, tell them, oh, you think that you should do it. You should write this way. Well, I actually think you should write this way. In your AI question, some people say you should write with AI. Some people say you shouldn't. And then, they're shifting beliefs one at a time. I think if you want to do this extremely well, in a newsletter, you need to shift so many beliefs that you shift a paradigm. And once the paradigm shifts, the identity starts to crack, and then the identity changes, and then new action is created. So in the world of AI, where there's all these tips, AI can give you any piece of information that you need. Information and operational practical knowledge becomes largely commoditized. And the real value is being the person who can shift people's identity and get them to actually do something. As for like what do I think creators should do in the AI age? I don't think AI is going anywhere. I think being people who are completely anti-AI, like 100% against it, and are shaming people into not using it, I personally think will do more harm than good for people, because it's going to happen no matter what. And the people using AI ethically and I want to say the right ways, but I'm not trying to say I have the right way to use AI. I'm saying in useful ways, especially from a writing perspective. Having AI generate writing is not smart. You do not want AI to do the thinking for you. You do not want AI to just be writing your posts. But AI is fantastic for learning. It is actually one of the greatest learning tools I've ever seen. And I seen Naval talk about this on Twitter, where he said something about, it's like, if you're an autodidact, AI is like the greatest thing that has ever happened, which basically means if you're someone who can teach yourself things and you're self-sufficient and you self-educate, AI is the greatest tool that has ever come out. And I agree. So an example of how this looks for me is I have an AI project that interviews me as if it was going to ghostwrite for me for a newsletter. So I've trained it because I ran a ghostwriting agency. Here's everything that we need to know to write content for people. So I will come to it and say, I have this idea. I really want to write about it. I'm not sure what the best hook and angle is, and I want to make sure I have all the different pieces, but here's how I'm thinking about it. Here's my first ideas. And AI goes, oh, that's great. In this section, you're missing the stakes. In this section, how can we talk to identity? In this section, are you providing practical tips, or are you jumping the gun and you haven't created enough emotional investment yet? And I'm like, oh, these are all gaps. Like, I know this stuff, but I struggle to always do it well, right? It's a lot of work. And AI helps me fill in those gaps. And then it gives me an outline that we've created basically together through me talking with it. And then I write the draft. I don't have AI write the draft, but I write the draft, and it's significantly stronger because my outline and the thinking and the persuasion mechanics are already thought through before I write the draft. And then when it comes to learning, I'll put it into AI and say, hey, I've trained you on all of the craft principles and things I'm working on with writing. What errors did I make in this in terms of rhythm, sentence variation, verb usage? Where did I not be persuasive enough? Where have I, tried to speak to identity, but I did it poorly? Where have I not talked about the stakes or the cost or consequences before giving a solution? And then it will actually show me every single place in my newsletter that I made a mistake. And when I did this yesterday, I had 42, no, I think it was like 57 errors in my last newsletter that I had to fix. So this is the type of stuff that before would have taken me so long because I think I've done everything well until the way that I programmed the AI on everything that I know, but I struggle to embody, analyzes it and says, oh, you did like a 6 or 7 out of 10 on a lot of this stuff, even though you did your best. And then it shows me like how to fix it. And I'm like, shit. And I'm learning faster than I've ever learned. It's like having a writing coach who's just there with every single piece of content I do to be like, here's maybe where you made a mistake. And I still have to use my judgment. I'm not just saying AI is always right. Sometimes it tells me to change stuff. I'm like, that's not right. That's not good. But it's such a fantastic learning tool. So it's good for accelerating craft if you're an artist. And then in business, it's good for replacing labor and doing things very quickly, like creating systems of operations, offers, and things like that. You just don't want to conflate the two. In my opinion, that's where a lot of people in AI get it mixed up. And that's where a lot of the war is people that love craft are like, AI is replacing craft. Well, for a lot of people it is. But for people who love craft, it's also the accelerant if you know how to use it right. And then in business, like, well, it's replacing a lot of jobs, it's taking a lot of jobs. Yeah, that's a general, like, definitely a problem. It's probably going to take jobs faster than they're created. That will be a really, really big societal problem. A lot of people are going to get very hurt by that. But I don't think AI is going anywhere. And I think telling people not to use it is going to lead to them getting replaced, personally. So that's my full stance on it.
Yeah, I I actually do agree on that. And even I think right now when people are hiring into job positions, they look about the AI literacy of people, if they know how to use AI and how they use AI. And just telling people just not to use AI is kind of counterproductive, I think. Like you need to learn how to use AI. If you don't learn how to use AI, you will not be pat by the back and just said like congratulations. And I've actually had a podcast with a business owner, and he talked about this topic that businesses don't really want to replace all the people that are working in the business. They only are replacing them because, they don't have money, or it is something that in the future it would be replaced anyway. It's like they don't want to ruin the whole economics for just the AI, or I'm not quoting directly, but it was an interesting perspective. And to get into that, how is your writing process? And after you said you write newsletters, you review it and all of that stuff, and even before. So I'm curious, how do you write?
Yeah, great question. My process is, so I'm what's called an ideas person. I think that my biggest problem in life is that I can't stop thinking. So I go for walks and I actually chat with AI to create what are called worldview documents. So I have my whole paradigm and my worldview essentially. What is it that I believe? And I believe I know. Split up across different domains. So it's like spirituality, learning, relationships, morality, work, personal development, things like that. And I just go for walks and I just talk to Claude and we'll say, here's the thing I'm thinking through. Here's what I believe I know. What am I not seeing? And where am I actually incorrect, or I could be more directionally correct based on this goal and like the thing that I'm trying to achieve. And I'll just go for a walk and talk with it for like an hour. And it will just push back on everything I think I know, and it'll help me refine my ideas, and I'll have a lot of new connections that form, and I'll just start like thinking through more stuff. And then at the end it spits out a summary. Here's everything we talked about, here's all the beliefs that changed. And that's where a lot of my ideas for my content come from. I then look at that, I'm like, okay, which of these ideas do I think would be the best to write about now that I've thought it through? I sit down with another Claude project, and that's where I do the outlines and the idea framing. Okay, here's an idea. How can we frame it and package it so that the most amount of people that this is relevant to will potentially be open to clicking and reading it? And then we outline the whole idea. And I think of the outline similar to how Dan does it. I say Dan Co has probably influenced how I do this more than anyone else. 80% why, 20% how. So it's not here's how to do something. It's here's 5 to 7 reasons why you need to take this seriously. And that's how I think about writing about a topic. So if I was going to talk about learning, it's not here's how to learn. Even if the hook is like here's how to learn anything fast, the actual content is here's 7 reasons why you need to learn like right fucking now. And then I will tell you how to learn. So it might be AI is replacing jobs. Like, what do? You need to be adaptable. Okay, what does being adaptable actually look like? Well, it's being able to learn really quickly. But like, what's currently stopping you from learning really quickly? Have you really thought about that? Well, it's that your life is in disarray. You don't know how to learn, which is one, but 2, you're not like emotionally regulated. You're just anxious and depressed and worried about all this stuff going on in the world. So when you sit down to learn, your mind can't focus. So like, how are you going to learn if you can't focus? Well, now we need to know how to focus. And I just like keep telling them like why they need to do these things and the cost and consequences. So that is in the outline. I then write the first draft myself, but I personally don't write it. I speak it. Because I used to be a teacher, and my verbal fluency is better than my written fluency. So I'll look at the outline. I'll just turn voice dictation on with Whisper Flow, and I will just speak the whole newsletter section by section as if I'm just speaking it to someone like a friend. And then that'll be the first draft. I'll then edit it, get it as good as I possibly can, and then I put it into a Claude project that gives me feedback and ideas like this is where you need to do compression, this is where your verb usage is bad, et cetera, et cetera. It's more about like the psychology, persuasion, identity shifts, like how well did I do this? And then I go back and forth with that project doing the edits until it's done. And that's my whole writing process.
That's pretty cool. I never heard of anybody actually saying their newsletter as the first draft. I think that's pretty cool. And you talk about a lot about building and breaking beliefs. How much or how long or what's your indicator to how did you break someone's belief or how did you change it? How long should the newsletter be, or is there a metric that you use that breaks somebody's belief? Because there can be an hour-long newsletter like 10,000 words or I don't know how much, and there can be a few shorts, reels or something. And I'm curious, like, where's the metric there and where it actually breaks deep?
Yeah, so it's hard to have an actual metric of how do I know if I broke someone's belief. And it takes saying things multiple times in a different way until people are willing to question their beliefs. And a lot of times it takes multiple newsletters about similar topics until someone's belief will shift. It's very gradual. But beliefs tend to change, especially deep-rooted ones, when they come into contact with contrary experiences that make them realize that the cost and consequences of those beliefs are too much. In other words, when the pain of having the belief is greater than the pain of changing the belief is more likely to change. It has more lubricant. So I operationalize that or think of it tactically as what belief needs to change, I need to call it out. I then need to talk about why it is wrong, which means what does this belief cost you? What are the consequences of not changing it? What happens if you, in the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 years, if you don't change this belief? What type of people believe this and what traits do they have? And in like a negative way, I would say, like, are they victim mentality? Things like that. what problems and pain does this belief create? And then once you've said a lot of that, assuming you've done it in a very acceptable, socially acceptable way, or a way that people are willing to accept, then you introduce the new belief and why it's wrong. Here's the costs that it avoids. Here's the benefits that it gets. Here's also the reality of making it feel grounded. I personally, my personal framework for this is what I call validate and upgrade. I don't like to just tell people they're wrong about everything. I know some people do. It's just not my vibe. Because I think every belief has a cost. Even like healthier ones or better ones, quote unquote, still have costs. They're just different. There's all about trade-offs. So I prefer to be like, okay, I'm going to validate you. Like, here's why this belief has worked for you up to this point. An example might be, let's say it was somebody who's going to the gym and they just were never going to the gym at all. So now they just go to the gym for 15 minutes a day, but now they're not getting any gains. You know, they walk to the gym, hop on the treadmill, and then they come home and they don't really get anything from that. It's like, okay, I'm going to validate you. It's great that you're going to the gym. It's great that you even go for 15 minutes. And at one point, you actually needed to do that. This actually served you because you weren't going at all. And if you didn't just go to the gym for 15 minutes, you still wouldn't be going and you would just be gaining weight eating Doritos or something. But this way of doing this has a limit. And that limit is that now you're not actually making progress because you need to stay in the gym for longer. The thing that served you at level 1, you now need to upgrade to get to level 2. And that's personally how I like to do it. Is it's like validate, call out why it was useful, and then like move to the limitations and why it's now wrong for their current way of doing things, and then offer to upgrade them to a better way of doing things so they can achieve their next goal faster.
That's a good way to think about it. And what are the ways that people can get to their beliefs? And do you have some framework for that? How do people know what are their beliefs and what are their core beliefs? Or as you said, the story they are telling themselves about their life. Is there a way to do some sort of self-reflection and get to that point when you know and you're aware of that?
Are you asking how I could do it to understand my own beliefs or how I could do it to understand other people's?
I think first yourself, but I'm curious even in that other people, even when you have some dream viewer persona, that can be both.
Yeah, for yourself, a lot of it comes down to reflection and being willing to sit with yourself and question them. It's about valuing getting closer to the truth and getting it right than being right now. Because the cost of believing things that don't serve you is too great. Like in business, when I think that I have an offer that is going to crush and I put 6 months of work into it, which I have done this before, and then I launched it and I made a third of the money I thought I was going to make. When you have experiences like that, you start to realize that beliefs are models of reality and those models aren't always very accurate. And when they're not accurate in times when they need to be, it really hurts. And you're like, God, I feel so stupid. I wasted 6 months of time, like all that energy and the opportunity cost because I could have just, if I would have done a different offer and just went about this differently, I could have made 3 times as much money. So shit, I just lost like 60 grand. Like when you have moments like that, then you start valuing pulling apart your own beliefs. And then you do that through journaling and through actually questioning, like, okay, how would I know that I'm right about this? I need to write about that. How would I prove this wrong? And then actually try to prove it wrong. Look for evidence of the contrary. This is what you can do a lot when you're talking with Claude as well. Claude's not perfect, but go and chat with Claude. Say, okay, here's what I'm thinking of doing. What am I not seeing? Like, where might I be wrong about this? And then it can push back, and that can even help. That can be like talking with someone and helping you pull it apart. That's the more personal side. For other people, you're basically talking about market research. I'm not the best market research guy, but I would go look at other people's content in your niche. What are they talking about? What beliefs are they targeting with their content that did really well? What are what are patterns that you're seeing for like 3 or 4 people in your niche where they're talking about the same belief? Well, that's probably one that people are holding. And that's how I would typically do it. It just comes to reading a lot of other people's stuff and seeing what they're saying, how they're saying it, what beliefs they're targeting. And the more of that you do, the more data you'll have around what beliefs you really should target and talk to.
Yeah, that makes sense, basically. And I think it's a good answer. And one topic I wanted to get into is you like taught so many people, even on the internet, when you were a teacher, as a college teacher. And what are the biggest lessons you learned there and observations you had?
Lessons about teaching or in general?
In general.
That's a big question. Biggest lessons from teaching people. Teaching taught me that there's a lot of different ways to do something right. I think that's an important one. You start to see that the individual differences in people aren't bad things, they're just trade-offs. There's some people I teach who are really creative. I'm actually a little jealous. I'm like, you're so creative. Like, this is so cool. But they struggle with consistency. So, okay, or they struggle with structure. So when I'm teaching them, okay, you have the creative side, but you're doing too much creativity. You're changing things, like you're like breaking the rules too much, and now this stuff doesn't work. So then you got to show them how to reel it in, and that can be difficult. For other people, their content when I'm teaching them is just too bland. I'm like, there's no personality here. And then I chat with them like, you actually have a lot of personality when I talk to you. Like, there's a lot going on here, but it just doesn't come through in the content at all. And then you like help them solve that problem. So it's interesting to see how different people and who they are kind of like brings different problems to the surface and different trade-offs. That person that is really creative and people look at them and go, oh my God, like I really look up to their creativity. Like, they struggle with structure. And then the person who's really good with structure is just like not getting enough of themselves on the page, and there's not enough creativity, so they don't stand out. And there's just like pros and cons to everything. And the biggest lesson is just being able to see things in more of that gray, less tribal thinking. Because I've just taught such a diverse amount of people with different problems and different bottlenecks, but they also have so many different strengths and different weaknesses. And it's given me a larger appreciation for the differences in people and different people's roles. I think it's made me a more compassionate, empathetic person, being able to work with different people and understand them and their struggles more.
It kind of comes down to this quote I heard it. There is no right way, there's only your way out to the things. And essentially, you will find your way.
Yeah.
I want to get to the other thing about teaching, and what did you learn about teaching people and how to like teach people in the right way? Because I think a lot of people have problem with this on the social media.
Teaching, so many pieces to this. Here's a big one. One of the biggest things you have to know as a teacher is what stage the person you're teaching is at, because the method of how you deliver the information has to change. And I call it progressive complexity over time. So if someone is an extreme beginner and they're struggling to start, you have to give them no options, 0, or it will overwhelm them, because their problem in the beginning is, I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. I'm struggling with consistency. When I sit down to write, I get all this anxiety in my head, and I can't show up every day because I don't know what to do. So you just say, you're going to do just this one thing. And whenever they say, well, what about this? You go, doesn't matter. You're going to do this one thing, and that's it. You're going to sit down and you're going to write about your interests. And they go, well, what about niching? Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter right now for you. It doesn't matter yet. And then they follow that one way. And I would say that one way is basically constraining the tactics. Out of the 5 options and ways you can do this, I've picked one that I think works for you, and that's all you're going to do. But then that starts to become a limit after a while. The new problem is it's too constraining. So as somebody becomes more intermediate and more advanced, they're able to handle more complexity without overwhelm. Which means now when I sit down to write, I'm not just writing about my interests. I can think, okay, I can write about my interests. I can reference somebody else's post, or I could rewrite a top performer of mine, and I can choose which one. And you start to like be able to give them more options, and it like frees them a little bit to explore a bit more, but you give them the options slowly, one little option at a time. And you want to make sure that all your education connects all the way up. So you're not just giving them, every time you teach them something new, new thing, new thing, new thing, new thing, new thing. It's, okay, here's one thing, here's like the one thing you need to do, but now we're just deepening how you can do it. So we're improving your skill and your craft. So example, I'm saying here's how you do ideas. You just write about your interests. Now I'm not like, hey, with ideas, you don't actually do ideas anymore. You do something totally different. No. Okay, now there's 2 ways to do ideas. And now there's 3 ways to do ideas. And see how they're all similar, but they're a little bit different. And you like create that complexity over time, and you give them more options as you go up. And eventually what you arrive at is, in the beginning, you were giving them tactics. This is how you do ideas. As they become more advanced, you give them principles. Principles are, here's the underlying way to do something that works like all the time. So I'm trying to what would be a good content principle. So like for a hook, a principle could be, you need to have a curiosity loop. There has to be a curiosity loop. There has to be a gap. You tell a beginner that, they have no fucking clue what to do. Well, your hook, just use a curiosity loop. They're like, how do I do that? You just do it. See, it's not constrained enough for them. So what instead you tell a beginner is, the first thing you say is how to achieve goal without obstacle. And they go, well, what if I write about a problem? No, you don't know. No. What do you, no. You don't know. Good. And that's what I mean by you slowly give them more options as they learn more things. And the art of creating good education is knowing who are you speaking to at what time, how do you constrain those options, and how do you introduce more options over time without overwhelming.
How do you know a person became like an intermediate from the beginner? When does the change go? How do you know if somebody is already an intermediate, or they are ready for those principles, or they are not ready?
I would say I tend to know when I talk to people where they're at, but the way that someone could know for themselves is, does constraining the options limit them or empower them? Like if getting rid of like a shit ton of options to where you only do things one way would harm someone and they can't be versatile enough, then they're probably an intermediate or an advanced. But if giving them just one way to do things actually allows them to get better faster, then they're still a beginner. So that's how you would know for yourself or for someone that you're talking to. But typically, if you are marketing with education products, I would just choose who you want to work with. And you just need to know, I'm either making this course for beginners or intermediates. You typically don't want to make advanced courses anyways. That's like high ticket stuff, like when you just do one-to-one coaching. But if you're making education, probably should just choose beginners, which means you're just constraining all the options down to one path. And then when people go, what about this? Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. That's how you'd figure it out.
Yeah, and what are the other things that make a great product, great educational product, besides, knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to at what level?
Well, I've kind of covered that a little bit with the progressive complexity. I do think good evergreen education, though, education that will be around today and like 5 to 10 years from now, is principles based. So tactics, I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit, but principles means that it's going to be relevant for a really long time. And if you can simplify and constrain options to easy to understand principles, that's where you get really, really good education. Like I would say Alex Hormozy does this really well. Like when you read 100 Million Offers, it is principles. that even beginners can understand. And that's why it's such effective, hard to break models. Like this is a Deutschian science-based thing, but I do believe it applies to education. Good theories or explanations are hard to vary. That is like that idea is so big. It could like it should sit as like one of the most foundational beliefs of most people. So if you can prove something wrong easily, or you can't prove it wrong easily, it's not very good education. So I'll give you an example with Hormozy's model that's really good. When he says in 100 million leads, I think there's a part in there where it's like 4 options. It's like there's people you know, or like strangers you know, strangers you don't know, and then there's like 2 other options, right? I
Yeah,
can't
the
remember
core
them all.
4, I think.
The core 4, yeah, exactly. How do you vary that principle? Like you really can't. You know what I mean? Like who else is there to reach out to? It's like, no, that principle encompasses everything. It's so hard to vary, which is why the education is good. If I can vary the education and I can say, actually, like there's a contradiction here, and I can do that without even really thinking that much, it's not very good education. So that's where a lot of the work is in creating the product, is getting the explanations of why this thing works down to things that are hard to vary with different theories. That's a bit
Makes
more
sense.
advanced, but I hope I explained it simply.
No, I think it's clear. I get it, so I think 99% of the audience will get it too, so for sure.
Great.
And even before this, you said we were talking about this creative side and writing books. Would you want to write books in the future?
I had not wanted to write a book until like a week ago, actually. I have people in my life that always tell me I should write a book, but it's a lot of work. Like even writing a newsletter is a lot of work, let alone a book that would be evergreen. It would take me 1 to 2 years for sure, at least, doing it every day. I'm someone who values writing, but I'm not in love with writing like some of my contemporaries are. So I always wondered if a book was right for me as a medium because I don't necessarily love words. I'm not someone who just sits there and is like wordsmithing because I'm more of a verbal thinker and a verbal person when I articulate. And that's what prevented me from wanting to write a book for a long time was, do I really want to sit down and like labor over these words? And also, do I have something that I feel is worth putting into a book? I think that's like another big thing too, is I wouldn't want to just write like a book. I think too many people do that. They're like, I'm going to write a book, and they just write about the first thing that comes to mind. Like, if I'm going to sit down and dedicate 2 years of my life to creating a book as a product, I need to have ideas and something to say and a stance that I'm like, this is really, really important, and I want to get it out there. And it's taken me a long time to figure out what would that idea be, would I even want to commit to it. And more recently, since I've been building out my worldview with Claude and going on walks, and I think there's a lot of interesting things that I have to say that I haven't heard framed in quite the same way that I'm framing it, which makes me feel like I'm narrowing closer into some topics that could be a book, but I will test them all on social media first. And only when they're like really refined will I actually sit down to do the book. But also, I've started to fall more in love with writing recently, which I didn't think was going to happen. I would say it was an identity block. Even though I'm a writer, I didn't identify as like the writers, if you know what I mean. People that are like, well, the way that he did the verb in that sentence is just, I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
me. Like,
The structure of the sentence is
yeah,
beautiful, you know.
exactly. That's exactly it. I'm not someone who really does that until more recently. Basically, I created a Claude project on all of the prose techniques I know I need to be better at. It's like an AI writing coach. And what it does is I say, hey, today I really want to work on my physiological mapping is what I call it. It's instead of speaking abstractly, like I felt anxiety. What does anxiety feel like in the body? What happens in your like fingers, your toes, like all of that, right? And I have Claude give me exercises and it will say, here's a prompt, I want you to write about this anxiety experience with physiological mapping. And then it grades me and says, here's what you did well, here's what you didn't, here's what I want you to try again and like improve yourself. And it's almost like Duolingo for writing, but it's actually helped me fall in love with writing. Like it's just, I'm having a lot of fun doing it for 30 to 60 minutes a day. And now that I'm enjoying improving on the technical side of writing, I'm thinking, you know what, maybe I actually could write a book one day. So the ideas are, I'm slowly getting there, but I'm probably still many years off.
Yeah, I get that. That's, I think, absolutely normal feeling to feel. And I want to get back into the feeling emotions. I have a great, I know a great guy about this, not I know, but he's called like Joe Hudson. He's talking about these emotions and how to feel them in your body. He said about processing his emotions. We can get into the stuff too, like one of the first steps is like knowing what you feel and then just kind of feeling it in your body. When you have anxiety and stress, many people feel the tightness in your chest and all of that other things that are in your body. And many people even resent that and don't process the emotions, which can create many problems. And wonder like what are more takes you have on that, because I know you're big into journaling too and all of that even deeper stuff and processing emotions.
Yeah, so I think of emotions across two axes. There are emotions as signals and emotions that are fleeting. I think it's important to distinguish between the two. So if I'm sitting down to write and I get a lot of anxiety around writing, that is like, yes, that is a signal, but the difference is the only way I can get through the anxiety and stop feeling it is to write. So I actually need to go against the emotion. And so in that case, it's not like, okay, I need to sit down, I need to process this anxiety, and then once it's processed, then I can sit down and write. No, that is like true avoidance. That is not the right thing to do. So in those cases, I call them fleeting emotions. Once I do the activity or the thing that the emotion is like preventing me from doing, then it'll go away. But there are other emotions that are like persistent signals that they just exist like all the time. And an example might be being creatively unfulfilled. So that is something that was a signal that's trying to, when I was writing on LinkedIn for many years, it was trying to tell me, hey, you need to like make a change here. And I can sit down and I can try to process it, be like, nah, like, I don't need to make a change. I'm fine. Let's just like feel this emotion and let's like process it away. No, like this emotion is trying to get me to take new action. So that's what I need to do. So that was when I found Substack and I did new action and that emotion went away and it was processed because I listened to the signal and I did the thing it wanted me to do. Then when it comes to like emotions that truly need to be processed, you're kind of talking about like really sticky emotions, maybe trauma. Is there emotions that linger all the time that cause you to act against your goals? Or they rob you of energy, of peace of mind. Those are things that you actually do have to sit with and process, and it's very challenging to do so. Like this is where you're getting into maybe being like a psychologist, and it's a little bit beyond my scope, but I can share stuff that works for me. And the first fundamental thing that I've learned is that these emotions cannot be processed unless you are in a relaxed state. So if you're really anxious and you have all this like anxiety all the time, or maybe shame is a very hard emotion to process. If you have a lot of shame, you can't just be like, oh, I'm feeling all the shame and I'm really worked up, I need to like journal and get it out. For me, that never worked. It just caused that shame to stay there sticky for so long. And like when I was working, it would just like pop up in my mind and it's like always front and center. And I feel all these negative emotions around it. So instead, I do breath work for about 30 to 60 minutes. I know that's a long time, but I'm talking like, this is a practice. Like I'm sitting down in the evening, I'm dedicating time. I got to like process this. I got to get to like see what's going on here. And then I do the breath work, puts me into a really relaxed state of mind. And then I talk to it. That's my process. Maybe it's become a verbal articulator. I might sound crazy sitting there on my couch talking to my shame.
No, you're good. You're good.
But I treat it like it's another person. It's like it's a part of me. I go, hey, like, what are you trying to show me? Like, hey, what's going on here? Get like curious, almost like I'm an older brother who's like helping a really young brother with something. Like, hey, what's going on? What's the problem? I feel like there's all this stuff that we've been feeling, and like, let's talk about it. And I just pause. And then I find in my subconscious mind, like things will just start popping up, like thoughts will pop up. They're like, oh, like the way you said this like kind of bothered me, or like I just kind of listen, just like see what pops up. And then after a while, like I'll just know something's like, boom. It's like, oh, when you did this, like I was on a sales call the other day, and I'm not a really pushy salesperson, but for some reason on this particular sales call, I pushed in the wrong way. And I knew at the end, I didn't feel good about it. I was like, oh, I actually was really pushy on that sales call. I don't usually do that. And I felt a lot of shame around it and a lot of guilt. And I had to sit with myself in the evenings. I couldn't get it to go away. I was like, what's going on? And it just popped up. It's like you really pushed, and now you like ruined your reputation, and you made that person feel bad. And I'm just like, all right, like let's just feel that. Let's sit with it. It really hurts. It sucks. Wish I didn't do that. Just really sit with that emotion. And then once I've sat with it and accepted it, then it's like, all right, like, are you ready to like maybe talk about a different way to view this? And then I talk about reframing it and thinking of it differently. And sometimes it involves multiple sessions of doing this. Sometimes it involves like months of doing this, depending on how deep that thing is. Sometimes it involves somatic therapy where you gotta just like shake a lot, like a duck that just got out of water. And you gotta like release stuff out of the body. I've had some of that where I've had to shake profusely for like 30 minutes. But those are some things that work for me from a non-medical professional.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. And I want to get back to that thing you said, that those like fleeting emotions, that for example, when you feel fear, but now when I feel fear, I'm not going to sit for an hour and just kind of procrastinate on that thing because I just feel this emotion. Do you think feeling emotions and processing it is the same thing? Like when you're in an emotion and you don't push it away, you just process, you just like feel it, it is the same as processing it. Or maybe even for the deeper stuff.
I think it's one of the steps of the process, but it's not the whole process. There are there are emotions that I've had that are very sticky and very hard to feel. But even if I do feel them, it's not enough. That's why I say I've had to do somatic therapy. So I've had some uh, when I was a child, I had these really weird existential dreams about dying, like multiple times, like some of the scariest dreams I've ever had in my life. And a couple of months ago, I kept like these dreams kept like coming up for me, like just in regular waking day. I would just remember them and feel all of this like really scared dread. Like I call it existential dread, and it was making me sometimes even feel like I could have a panic attack. So one evening, I decided to do some processing and I sat with it and I let it come up. It was really scary. I felt like I was going to die. Like it was like I was reliving that moment because trauma embeds at the and is remembered at the age that it happened. So if the trauma actually like happened to you when you were around 5 years old, even though I'm 31, I feel like I'm 5 years old again when I'm experiencing that trauma, and it like regresses development. So I felt like I was going to die, even though logically I knew I was fine. My body was just like freaking out. And I just felt it and I let all the overwhelming waves of dread come in, but it wasn't enough. Then my body was like, you need to shake it out. And that's why I say somatic therapy is important. The same way, I don't know if you've ever seen the video. There's a video of a deer that gets attacked by like a lion or something, or an antelope that gets attacked by one, and it's going to die. But then the lion ends up getting scared away. And before the deer gets up and starts walking away, it just sits there and it just does this and it just shakes for like 2 minutes. And then once all of the energy, the kinetic energy is out of its muscles and its joints, then it starts walking. But as humans, we're actually not taught to release all of that energy. We're actually taught to hold it in for social reasons. So when I experienced this dread, intuitively, my body was like, we just need to shake. And I think I shook for like 30 to 45 minutes. Like it was like an exercise. Like I was just like, just shaking like I was having an exorcism. But I just knew that I needed to do it. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, I feel like a lot of that was processed. We finally let all that stuff out. But it wasn't just from acknowledging the emotion and sitting with it. It actually came with an extra layer of having the body move and like release a lot of that kinetic energy.
I'm interested in the way how you view religion now, because you're talking about right now about energy, kinetic energy and therapy. Do you ever think about, religion and that other stuff, or it's just kind of just this meditation and being just with peace with yourself and what you're doing in the world?
I think about religion a lot. I'm more meta-religious, or you could say spiritual, not religious, but people say, what does that actually mean? I think that all humans have a religious component to them, and I call it their connection to the realm of ideas. That's how I think of humans, at least how we're different from other animals, is we have this like abstraction layer where we can think about things that don't exist. But it's even deeper than that, because things that don't exist, ideas, can change our behavior. And religion is whatever idea you put at the very top of the value hierarchy that changes your behavior, in my opinion. So you will hear people say, in the word of God, I don't kill people and I love thy neighbor. And they actually like live that out, right? They're like, I don't kill people because God tells me I can't. Like God, like God is an idea in that way. Like it's a conceptualization of there is a figure who is saying, don't do this because you will be punished. And then they go, okay, I'll listen to that. It's not the same way that I'm telling them, hey, don't kill somebody. They're thinking this idea is actually causing them to not kill somebody. And it literally changes their behavior. Like to me, that is the religious inclination, is what are the ideas that orient your behavior? And someone might say, well, I'm an atheist, not religious. Well, that just means that you put no God at the very top. It's like, well, then why don't you kill people? They're like, well, I don't need God to tell me not to kill people. I just think killing is wrong. Okay, so they have this idea that killing is wrong. Animals don't have an idea that killing is wrong. They can't think like that. They just kill. Like there's an argument that they have other tribal reinforcements. They don't kill each other and stuff, like sure. But it doesn't come from a conceptual idea standpoint of, well, I just believe that killing is wrong, so they don't kill. So it's like, oh, so there's an idea that you have that changes your behavior. So in my model, that actually means it's not just like religious. There's like a realm of ideas that can change your behavior. And I think that is actually a religious or spiritual inclination. That's how I would describe it. I can go a little bit deeper if you want. Like it's not the easiest thing to explain.
Like for sure, if you need to and if you want to, like explain it more into depth and people to understand you better.
I think there's even an argument that politics and business can become a religion. So let's say that somebody believes in capitalism. They're like, I believe that if I contribute to the capitalist society, that I can make money and other people can make money. So they act differently and they build businesses. People that say, I actually don't believe in the capitalist society, I believe in communism, a lot of them don't even try to build businesses because they're like, I don't believe in the capitalist idea. I believe that like we shouldn't do that. I work for like nonprofits or they do whatever, right? Those are still ideas that change what people do. Like to me, that's spirituality.
But I think there's a difference between. Do you think there's a difference between your personal philosophy that may be like Stoicism, capitalism, socialism, and your religion? Do you think there's a difference?
I think typically religions are just ideas that are higher levels of abstraction. This is something I'm still thinking through, but it's like God is a conceptualization. So people think of religion in relation to God and how do you relate to God and things like that. That's just taking the highest possible conceptual abstraction because you can't get any higher than God. You can't think higher than God up a value hierarchy. Well, what's above God? Well, another God. Well, what's above that God? Another God. It's like, okay, so God's at the top, right? So I think when you think of what ideas can orient my behavior at the highest level, it's basically God, and that's what we typically create rules around and ideas, and we call that a religion. It's here's like a collection of ideas up to the highest level of abstraction that tell you what to value, what you ought to do, and how you should behave. Politics and capitalism and things like that, to me, is very similar. It's just not abstracted up as high. So it still comes from the spiritual, religious aspect of ourselves. It just doesn't go all the way up to God. It just goes up to a different thing, like, oh, I believe that I should make money. Well, why? Why do you believe that? Why does that change your behavior? It's still an idea. So that's why I still think it's spirituality.
Interesting. From what I heard from you, I'm deep into this topic too, but so one thing is that, I'm a Christian and I'm getting into like perspective and things. From I heard you mainly think about religion, about this thing, like, there are these main ideas, which is true, a lot of it is internal, and what you can do and what you can't do, and these rules about it, and there's like the hierarchy, it's a god that we should listen to. But I think of course there's God, and there should be, at least in my religion, a fear of God of some kind, as this, figure or whatever you want to think about it. But there's a certain way of just even freedom. A lot of things even aren't just black and white, and you shouldn't do and you should do these things about it, and when you do these exact steps you will get to, I don't know, a heaven, or when you do these exact steps you will just get into hell. There's like a deeper thing, because when you get deeper into this religion stuff and things like that, a lot of people think of it as this way: oh, when I will kill people and do this bad stuff, I will get to hell, and if I just pray and just go to church every Sunday, I will get to heaven. But I think it's deeper, because when you get deeper, you just have this in your head, like, is it this the right way or isn't it the right way? But then you come to this deeper relationship with God and things start to be a lot more complex. And it's an interesting topic to talk about for sure, even with you. So, yeah,
Definitely.
glad to have your perspective on that.
It's one of my favorite topics, for sure. For me as a child, what confused me is all religions said that they were the one true religion. And it gave me a lot of fear. I was like, well, Christianity says that if I don't follow Christianity, I'm going to go to hell. But then there's like the Buddhist tradition that talks about like liberation and saying if I don't meditate and follow these practices, then I'm not going to be liberated. And then, other religions have different rules and different consequences. And as a child, I was very scared. I'm like, I want to know which one is actually going to allow me to live the best life and to be like liberated or go to heaven or whatever, right? I wasn't like a very clear thinker back then. And I couldn't find an answer because everyone just told me that theirs was right. And that didn't sit right with me. I'm like, if everyone says theirs is right, then how do I know which one is right? And I couldn't find any satisfying answers to that question. And that's why, like, after years of thinking this through, I came to the conclusion that religion is more about the structure of the mind of what it means to be human. It is a very like human inclination to have a religious manifestation of some sort. But that manifestation can happen in different ways with different sets of rules around different gods, and they all have trade-offs. So Islam is a very strict religion, but people who think in extremely black and white love it because they don't like ambiguity. Hinduism is very ambiguous. There's multiple gods and practices, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you really like start thinking about it. But there's certain people who don't like rules, and for the structure of their mind, it makes them feel connected to the divine. And Christianity, this is a bit of my opinion here, I think is the most adaptable combination of ideas for the most amount of people. And it's broad enough that a lot of different types of people can adapt it. It's grounded in enough observable outcomes and measures, such as like increasing well-being, having strong community, making you a more effective human. I think Christianity is really good at that. But at the end of the day, to me, it's still just a certain combination of these ideas around a conceptualization of God and heaven that answers the existential questions of what it means to be human. And it gives you a bunch of ideas in a pre-packaged way that says, we have figured out a really robust religious system for you. Here's all of them. You can believe it. But at the end of the day, for me, all of them are trying to solve the same problem, is that we have a religious inclination and that there's different manifestations of that inclination that feel right for different people. And it's just about finding the one that works for you. And that's just me like exploring it myself and truly being like, if I really take this as far as I can, what are the deeper truths here? And that was what it led me to.
Like I get that, absolutely. And when you start like digging deeper into these religions, there are even, as you said, a lot of ideas that connect and that are the same, but packaged in a different way. There isn't, like, even killing, for example, as you said, killing is bad. That's not only this Christianity and you shouldn't kill, and or there's Buddhism and other things like that, and people like to bend it a lot, but it is, at the end of the day, a lot of like these religions come down to the same beliefs and the same principles. And I don't think they are bad or anything. There's this misbelief about Christians that we're such conservatives and we don't like new ideas or the new people, and we, hate this kind of people and we don't agree with this kind of people. Like, I don't think that's true. I think I was even raised in that belief that we should respect every religion and we should respect like each other, because we are not kinda in some cases that different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just real interesting for that, because yes, like all religions are telling people we are the right one, and like what should I pick now? And I think even people like me who were raised in a religion have even a little bit easier, because for me, in a lot of books Dostoevsky, I think, wrote about it, there's something deeper than the mind. A lot of people call it subconscious, or even the deeper thing that is called, like, when you kill somebody, it isn't just this thing in your mind, it goes deeper. There is this deeper grief, there is this deeper everything, that you have this regret, like deep regret that you did something wrong. But that, as you said, other animals don't have it, and that of course makes a difference. And that can be, even this mind ideation that you created, the structure of mind. But it is just a really interesting topic to talk about. I think even I know a lot of people will have better answers for you and we will have a better conversation with you, but I'm not yet at the level of knowledge that I could like talk about these topics really deeply, and I kind of regret that, but need to fix that soon.
No problem at all. You are farther along than most people, for sure.
Thanks.
It's fun to even talk about it at all, because it's not something I do talk about much. But in my worldview, I do have a spirituality part of my knowledge base where I actually sit and I explore spirituality and have it push back, and I try to like understand it at a deeper level. And it's just like a fun exercise. I just personally like doing it and trying to get to deeper truths. I find it very fun and enjoyable, and I have a lot of respect for the different religions. Like, I'm not anti-religion in any shape or form. I think like especially Christianity is an extremely powerful prepackaged belief system that is it's a force of nature. It's basically like its own, it has like a life of its own, and it's the only reason it, or one of the reasons it tells people that it is the one true religion, is because it has to, in order to spread and survive and create cohesion. That's a mechanic of what it means for an idea to spread, not a flaw necessarily in the belief system. So it's fun to talk about religion, and I have a lot of respect for all of them.
Yeah, I think the same thing. And as you said, there's this deep even, we can link it to content even. Most of the times, people need to be reminded more than they need to be taught, especially religion as the Christian one. We talk about, like, Jesus Christ, and it isn't in the church, they will not say, we talked about him a lot, let's move to other thing, It's kind of this constant thing that is really, really appealing, and it's really deep, at least for me, and just can be just described in a lot of ways and just thought about in a lot of ways, and I'm getting into that deeper and deeper. Especially, I have a lot of respect for those monks and all of those things, and actually I've been getting deep into meditation because I've been doing this yoga thing and breath work because it's really just keeping me away, like kind of clearing my mind, helping me with anxiety. And I've got into, like, how does this connect with my religion, and am I doing, something wrong? Because at the base it is like kind of Buddhist. And I've, from what I read and what I researched, it is like, yes, it is all in the mind, basically, because you can meditate just to clear your mind, just to, get the energy with the space, but you can meditate just to clear your mind for God and just let him in, and to probably, read gospel and a lot of that. And I think that's really similar, but just the intention of the mind and what you're focused on and other things make the biggest difference at these things, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm getting deeper into the Catholic meditation, they call it, with those other things. So yeah, it's
Very
deep.
cool. I haven't heard of Catholic meditation. That's cool.
Yeah, it's at the base. I think there's this article from Vatican, I don't know how it's called in English, about, like, this meditation and this need for depth in this meditation, because I think, and a lot of people think, meditation is this deep state that gets them deep, like, spiritual. And there's this need for that, especially in the Catholic way. And it's like, it's nothing new. Monks and other people have been meditating, like Christians or a lot of people, a lot. Like, basically, that's almost the only thing that monks do. They meditate on the gospel and every, like, thing about it. And just the base is about not clearing your mind just to, like, get rid of the self. Some Buddhists would say, like, there is no self, there is only this one thing. In this case, in the Catholic meditation, it is more about getting your mind cleared for, God, like, not to enter, but to listen. When prayer in the Catholic is basically conversation with a God. And when you're meditating, you're basically having a conversation with him and, even listening to him. This whole deep thing, when I talk about it, it is kind of deeper than I thought, and I need to, research more about it. I never feel like I have this full base of knowledge that I am approved to talk about this, but, at least get the ideas and perspectives out and need to shape them more.
Yeah, though I love your humility around it. There's a lot of things we've talked about in this conversation that I'm a little bit shaky on as well. Spirituality, especially. Like, I've meditated for a long time, thought about the idea of no self and things of that nature, but I wouldn't claim to be an expert on them. And some of these are like lifelong studies, right? That we're just deepening and deepening our knowledge of. They're very slippery things to try to define, to understand.
Yeah, and this conversation, actually, to be honest, I haven't done a lot of conversation that has been more than an hour long. And to be honest, it is all 10 times more fun, because even through the first hour, you're just getting to know that person and how they think. And then after the hour, just clock takes, you're getting to that deep stuff, which I like. So, yeah, don't have much time, but at least I want to ask you the last question. Is You were talking a lot about getting on walks and getting ideas. What are the best ideas or the best 3 ideas you had recently on a walk that come up to you? And maybe you didn't even like post about them or write about them.
The 3 big ones. We talked about one of them. It was the revelation that one of the new value of being a creator isn't just giving tips, it's giving people a reason to do something. Because you really love religion and stuff, you might find this interesting. There's this philosophical problem called the is-ought problem. It's that science can tell you what is, but it cannot necessarily tell you what to do. And the is-ought problem is, well, if I understand the world and I understand science and I know like all these things that I can do, what should I do? What am I ought to do? And I think creators, one of the biggest roles that creators can fill right now is to give people that ought, that reason to do something. People know what they should do. They already know, and they're beating themselves up because they can't bring themselves to do it. And the creators who can actually create that behavior change in people, that can get them to finally take action to improve their life, that can persuade them to finally have a reason to do something, I think that is one of the most important jobs right now that more creators need to fill the role of. And I don't see very many people doing it. I haven't written about that yet. That was probably like 5 days ago. I was thinking through that one. A second one, I'll try to connect them. So the second one is that I believe that ideas are one of the most important things alive because they orient biology. What I mean by orientation is if you have a goal, how do you like orient your behavior or adjust your behavior to hit that goal? Your ideas determine all of this. And I see so many people talk about goal setting, which is essentially values. Goals is what do you value most to move towards and dedicate the short amount of time you have to, right? And then you have habits. Okay, well, now that we have a goal, we need the habits. There's a missing piece in the middle for me that is ideas. And almost no one talks about it. I actually think that people shit on ideas. Like, ideas are worthless, execution is everything. Ideas are worthless. What are you talking about? The things that you believe and the ideas that you accept determine every fucking thing in your life. Everything. Like, do you accept the idea that you should act towards your goals? Do you accept the idea that there is a God or not? And how does that change your behavior? Do you accept the idea that you should be conservative, liberal, or that there's a more nuanced take? Do you accept the idea that corporations are greedy or you should build one yourself? Or is there a more nuanced take? All of these ideas literally dictate the actions you are able to take because they crystallize your identity and they orient you around your goals. I think that is like maybe the single biggest idea that I've thought through. This was like a couple of weeks ago I thought about that one and how deep this really goes. And it's like, you know, Jung had this quote, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. It's basically that. It's like, what do you mean ideas aren't important? They literally dictate what you do and what you believe you ought to do. It relates to the is-ought problem. Even if you were to say, well, life is meaningless and I shouldn't do anything, that's still an idea. It's just that you've taken the most useless version of it that has prevented you from taking any action. You have an idea that literally means that you won't take any action at all. And that idea controls you. To me, that is one of the most important revelations that I've had. And how that relates to behavior change, that would be my third one, which is that the ideas actually relate to adaptation. So I think of learning similar to Hormozy, where he says learning is behavior change, but I think of it more from an adaptation standpoint, which is something in the environment has changed, and I now need to adapt my behavior to still be fit to excel in that environment. And part of what makes you fit in different environments is the ideas that you allow to orient your behavior so that change is easier. Like right now with AI, to bring it back to that, some people have the idea that AI is evil and they should never touch it. And I'm not saying AI is or isn't evil. I'm saying that idea has changed their adaptability to the environment. So the environment's changing really fast because of AI, some of the most rapid change we've ever experienced. And the idea in their mind is, I need to not change, because they believe that AI is evil and they shouldn't use it. So now that's how I like connect all of that, is like the personal philosophy side for creators. What is it that you ought to do? Well, that's determined by the ideas that you accept, and like the ideas that you'll accept as true and worthy of valuing. And then that will change how adaptable you are to the environment and how much you can change and how quickly, so that you can still be fit to achieve your goals regardless of the environmental context or how the environmental context changes. Those are probably three of the biggest ideas I've thought through recently.
Super cool. Yeah, I see you're the big ideas guy. Cool. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, that's probably all for this episode. We haven't talked about so much stuff actually. 90% of my questions I wrote about are like not touched. And I'm kind of the same as you. As you said, as you think I'm big into religion and philosophy, I am, but I'm big into even other things. I wanted to even to touched about music, your lifestyle, because I know you've been big on health recently for that, but maybe other time. I hope we can sometimes do this again, and maybe if this podcast get bigger, even in person, that would be cool. So yeah.
Of course. Yeah, if you got a bunch of questions, we can do a second one. Sounds fun.
For sure. So yes, thanks for being here. Thanks for accepting my invitation to this podcast. And of course, thanks to all the people that came to and watched through this episode to hear. I'm thankful for all of you. Truly.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone who watched and listened. This is great.
Right.